I'm picking up my granddaughter from school. She gets into the car and I can tell right away. Something's off. Not sad. Not angry. Just flat. Like someone turned off a light inside her. She's 15. I ask how her day was. She shrugs. I ask if something happened. She says no. Then there's a long silence. And finally she says something that's been rattling around in my head ever since. Grandpa, does it ever feel like nothing you do actually matters? I'm George. I'm 87 years old. I've lived through wars, recessions, family tragedies, failures I wouldn't wish on anyone. And that question shook me. Because I've asked myself the same thing more times than I can count. The difference is this: she's at the beginning of her life, looking forward. And I'm near the end, looking back. And somewhere between those two perspectives, I think I finally understand something important. We live in a world obsessed with impact. Everyone wants to leave a mark, change the world, be remembered. People chase careers they think will make them significant. They post online hoping for validation. They measure their worth by how many people know their name. I get it. I really do. But here's what I've learned after nearly 9 decades on this planet. The things that actually matter rarely feel like they matter at the time. Let me tell you about my neighbor, Margaret. She lived 3 houses down for 42 years. Margaret was a schoolteacher, 3rd grade, same elementary school, her entire career. Never married, no children of her own. When she retired, there was a small gathering in the school gym, maybe 30 people. No cameras, no big speeches, just a plaque and some flowers. 2 years later, she passed away quietly in her sleep. At her funeral, I expected the same kind of turnout. But that church was packed, standing room only. One by one, people stood up to speak. A doctor said Margaret was the first person who ever made him feel smart. A woman who ran a non-profit said Margaret taught her to read when everyone else had given up. A man in his 50s stood with his daughter and said, "I became a teacher because of her." Story after story. Lives changed. Paths redirected. All because of a woman who thought she was just doing her job. Margaret never tried to change the world. She never chased recognition. She just showed up, day after day, and paid attention to the kids in front of her. She learned their names. She noticed when they struggled. She stayed late to help with fractions and spelling words. Nothing glamorous, nothing headline-worthy. And yet, the ripples from her life are still spreading decades later. I think we've got it backwards. We think mattering means being seen, being known, being remembered by crowds. But life isn't built that way. Life is built on small moments between people. A conversation that shifts someone's perspective. A kindness that arrives right before someone gives up. Showing up when it's inconvenient. Listening when you'd rather talk. These moments don't feel important while they're happening. They feel ordinary, easy to dismiss. When I was 39, I hit a rough patch. My business was failing. Money was tight. I was drinking too much, sleeping too little. I felt like a failure. One night, I was sitting in my car outside a bar, trying to decide whether to go in, and a guy I barely knew, Tom, knocked on my window. We'd met maybe twice. He said he was getting coffee and asked if I wanted to join him. That was it. No lecture, no intervention, just coffee. We sat in a diner for 2 hours. He didn't ask what was wrong. He didn't try to fix me. He talked about normal things, his kids, a book he was reading, a trip he'd taken years earlier. And somewhere in that completely ordinary conversation, something in me settled. I didn't go into that bar. I went home. Tom probably forgot about that night by the next morning. But it mattered. It changed the direction of my life. That's the truth about mattering. It's almost never dramatic. It doesn't announce itself. You don't get a notification telling you that something you did changed someone's life. Most of the time, you'll never know. My wife Eleanor used to write letters, real letters, stamps and envelopes. She wrote to our kids at college, old friends, neighbors, anyone who crossed her mind. I used to tease her. Everyone has phones now. I'd say, just call them. She'd smile and keep writing. After she passed, I found boxes of letters people had written back to her. And nearly everyone said the same thing. Your letters mattered more than you know. People kept them, reread them, held on to them during hard times. She wasn't trying to matter, she was just reaching out. And she mattered enormously. Here's what I wish someone had told me when I was younger. Your life doesn't need to be extraordinary to matter. In fact, the pressure to be exceptional is what breaks people. It convinces them their ordinary life isn't enough. That showing up for family, doing honest work, being kind to strangers, somehow doesn't count. But almost everything that holds this world together is done by people no one will ever remember. Parents getting up in the middle of the night, workers doing their jobs well, friends who check in, volunteers who serve, clean, visit, care. Small acts, unremarkable on the surface, essential underneath. You want to know if you matter. Look at the people right in front of you. Are you present? Are you honest? Are you kind when you don't have to be? Those answers won't get you famous, but they determine whether your life meant something. When my grandson was 7, he was terrified of water. One summer, for 3 weeks, I stood with him at the shallow end of the pool. 15 minutes a day. I didn't push, I didn't lecture, I just stammered. By the end of the summer, he was swimming. He doesn't remember those moments, but I do. Because I know they mattered. The older I get, the clearer it becomes. Status fades, achievements blur, people forget what you did. But they never forget how you made them feel. They remember that you showed up, that you saw them when they felt invisible. That's what lasts. So here's my answer to my granddaughter. Yes, what you do matters, just not in the loud ways. It matters in the quiet moments. The unglamorous ones. The ones no one applauds. Your life that have to be a spectacle. It just has to be honest, present, kind. That's where real significance lives. Not in the spotlight, but in the steady, quiet work of being human with other humans. And before I'm done, there's something else I need to say. Because at 87, you start to see patterns you miss when you're young. You realize how many people spent their whole lives trying to be impressive, and how few of them were actually at peace. I've sat at hospital bedsides, held hands in quiet rooms, listened to people talk when they knew time was short. No one ever said, "I wish more people had known my name." They said things like, "I wish I hadn't been so busy. I wish I'd listened more. I wish I'd said I love you one more time." That's what comes up at the end. Regret doesn't come from being ordinary. It comes from being absent. From rushing through moments you can never revisit. From treating people like background noise. From assuming there will always be more time. There won't. That's not meant to scare you. It's meant to wake you up. Because the most dangerous lie we tell ourselves is that what we do today doesn't matter. It does. The tone you use with your child tonight. The patience you show a stranger. The message you almost don't send. The apology you keep putting off. Those things don't feel historic, but they're permanent. They settle into people. They shape how safe they feel in the world, how worthy, how seen. You may never know the full weight of your actions, and that's okay. In fact, that's how it's supposed to be. Mattering isn't about keeping score. It's about being available. Available to notice. Available to care. Available to stay when it would be easier to leave. Some days, all you'll do is show up, and you'll wonder if that was enough. It was. Some days, you'll say the right thing without realizing it, and it will echo in someone's mind for years. Some days, you'll fail. You'll lose your temper. You'll miss the moment. That doesn't erase the good. It just means you're human. If you're young and you feel behind, like everyone else has figured something out you haven't, let me tell you this clearly. You are not late. You are not invisible. And you are not wasting your life just because it looks ordinary from the outside. And if you're older, and you're carrying regrets like stones in your pockets, it's not too late either. There is still time to matter, to someone. One person. One moment. Today, when I dropped my granddaughter off that afternoon, she didn't suddenly look happy. Nothing was magically fixed. But before she closed the door, she paused. And she said, "Thanks for listening, Grandpa." That's when it hit me. In that moment, I didn't change the world. But I mattered. And maybe that's the whole point. Not to be remembered by everyone, but to be needed by someone. To leave people a little steadier than you found them. To be the reason the light flickers back on in someone who felt empty. That's a life well lived. And when my time comes, if that's what I'm remembered for, or even if I'm not remembered at all, that will be enough. Because meaning was never waiting at the finish line. It was always hiding in the small, quiet moments we almost overlook. And even now, as I say all of this, I know there are people listening who are thinking, "That sounds nice, but it doesn't feel true in my life." I understand that feeling. There were long stretches of my life where I did everything I was supposed to do, and still went to bed feeling empty. I worked hard. I paid my bills. I showed up. And yet, there were nights I stared at the ceiling wondering if any of it added up to something that mattered. Here's what I didn't understand back then. Meaning isn't something you discover all at once. It's something that builds quietly, over time through consistency, not intensity. We've been taught to look for fireworks, for moments that feel big, dramatic, undeniable. But life doesn't move in fireworks. It moves in inches. In habits, in tone of voice, in the way you respond when you're tired, when no one's watching, when there's nothing in it for you. Those are the moments that reveal who you are and quietly decide who you become. There were years when my children were young, and I thought I was failing them. I wasn't perfect. I lost my temper more than I should have. I missed things I can never get back. But years later, when they were grown, they didn't bring up my mistakes. They talked about the nights I sat on the edge of their bed, the way I showed up when they were scared, the fact that they knew I would come if they called. That's when I realized something that still humbles me. People don't need us to be remarkable. They need us to be reliable, to be steady, to be there again tomorrow. That's how trust is built. That's how love is felt. If you're waiting to matter until you feel confident, successful, or ready, you'll wait your whole life. Mattering doesn't start after you fix yourself. It starts in the middle of the mess. When you help even though you're struggling. When you listen even though you're tired. When you stay kind even though you're hurting. Those choices don't feel heroic, but they're brave. And over time, they shape a life that feels solid when everything else is uncertain. I've watched people chase happiness like it's a destination. Like once they arrive, they'll finally feel whole. But happiness comes and goes. Meaning stays. Meaning is what holds you upright when happiness disappears for a while. It's the quiet confidence that says, my life makes sense, even on the hard days. And that confidence doesn't come from success. It comes from alignment. From knowing that the way you live matches the way you treat people. As I look back now, the moments that shine the brightest weren't the ones where I won. They were the ones where I stayed. When I didn't walk away. When I chose patience over pride. When I made room for someone else's fear. Those moments didn't feel important then. But they're everything now. So if you're listening to this, and you're asking yourself the same question my granddaughter asked me, does anything I do actually matter? Let me answer you as honestly as I can. Yes, more than you know. You matter in ways you'll never be able to measure. And that's not a flaw in the system. That's the design. Life isn't meant to hand you proof. It's meant to ask for faith. Faith that showing up is enough. Faith that kindness leaves a mark. Faith that love echoes forward even when you can't hear it. One day, long after you've forgotten a conversation, someone will still be standing a little taller because of something you said. One day, someone will choose a better path because you treated them with dignity when they expected none. And you'll never know. But that doesn't make it meaningless. It makes it pure. So don't wait for permission to matter. Don't wait for applause. Don't wait until your life looks impressive from the outside. Start where you are, with who's in front of you, with what you have. That's how a meaningful life is built. Quietly, patiently, one human moment at a time. And if I could sit across from you right now, really look you in the eyes, this is what I'd want you to understand most of all. You don't wake up one day and suddenly know that your life mattered. There's no final report card. No moment where someone hands you a list of every life you touched and every burden you lightened. If there were, most of us would be shocked by how much good we did without realizing it. Because the truth is, we are terrible judges of our own significance. We remember our mistakes in high definition. We replay our failures. We measure ourselves by what we didn't become. But other people remember something else entirely. They remember how safe they felt around you. How you didn't laugh when they were embarrassed. How you stayed calm when they were panicking. How you made space for them when the world felt too loud. Those memories settle into people quietly. They become part of how they treat others, part of how they survive hard seasons, part of who they become. That's legacy. Not buildings with your name on them. Not awards collecting dust on shelves. Legacy is carried in nervous systems, in confidence passed down without words, in courage that didn't come from nowhere, And most of the time, you don't even know you're doing it. There were people in my life I thought were ordinary. Neighbors, coworkers, men and women whose names never left their zip code. Years later, I realized how often I'd borrowed their strength, how much of my steadiness came from watching them handle life without making a show of it. They weren't loud, they weren't impressive, they were consistent. And consistency, I've learned, is one of the rarest forms of love. If you show up enough times, people stop bracing for disappointment around you. They relax, they trust, they heal. That's not small, that's foundational. We talk so much about changing the world, but the world is just people, tired people, hopeful people, confused people doing the best they can. When you change how one person experiences the world, even briefly, you've changed the world more than you think. I wish I'd known sooner that urgency is the enemy of meaning. When you rush, you miss the point. When you chase outcomes, you lose presence. The moments that mattered most in my life were rarely efficient. They took time. They required patience. They asked me to slow down when everything else was telling me to hurry up. And slowing down felt irresponsible back then. Now I know it was wise. Because people don't open up on schedules. Fear doesn't resolve itself on deadlines. Trust doesn't form instantly. It forms when someone stays. So if you're exhausted, if you feel like you're falling behind, if you're worried your life isn't adding up to something meaningful, let me tell you this, as someone near the end of the road. You're probably doing better than you think. The fact that you care at all is already evidence. The fact that you're asking these questions means you're paying attention. And paying attention is the beginning of everything that matters. One day, long after I'm gone, my granddaughter will be an adult. She may not remember that car ride. She may not remember the words I said. But I hope she remembers the feeling. That when she felt empty, someone took her seriously. Someone stayed with her question, instead of trying to silence it. If that's all I leave behind, that willingness to sit with someone in their uncertainty, then my life will have been enough, because meaning was never something to achieve. It was something to practice, again and again, in ordinary moments, with imperfect people, including yourself. And if you keep practicing that, showing up, listening, choosing kindness when it costs you something, you won't need proof that you mattered. You'll feel it. Quietly, deeply. In the only way that truly lasts. And there's one more thing I've come to believe, something that only becomes clear when you've lived long enough to watch generations repeat the same fears in different clothes. Most people aren't afraid that they won't succeed. They're afraid that even if they do, it still won't mean anything. That quiet fear sits underneath so much of our anxiety. It's why people keep moving even when they're exhausted. Why they chase the next goal without stopping to feel the last one. Why silence feels uncomfortable. Because silence forces the question to surface. Is this enough? Am I enough? I spent many years running from that question, staying busy, staying useful, staying distracted. But time has a way of slowing you down, whether you cooperate or not. And when it finally slowed me down, I realized something simple and humbling. You don't find meaning by interrogating your life. You find it by inhabiting it. By actually being where you are, instead of constantly measuring it against some imagined version of where you think you should be. So much of our suffering comes from comparison. From looking sideways instead of inward. From confusing visibility with value. The loudest lives are rarely the deepest ones. Depth is quiet. It looks like restraint. It looks like patience. It looks like doing the right thing, even when no one claps. I've known people who were admired by thousands and deeply lonely. And I've known people with small lives, by every external measure, who were rich in a way no money could touch. They had rhythm. They had peace. They had relationships that could hold weight. That kind of richness doesn't come from achievement. It comes from attention. From noticing when someone's voice changes. From remembering small details. From treating ordinary moments as if they matter, because they do. If I could go back and change anything, it wouldn't be the big decisions. It would be the small ones I rushed through. The conversations I half listened to. The moments I was physically present, but emotionally elsewhere. Life isn't lost in catastrophes. It's lost in inches. In days you don't fully enter. In people you don't quite see. In feelings you postpone dealing with, until things calm down. They rarely do. What I've learned is this: calm isn't a future state, it's a practice. So is meaning. You practice it by being honest when it's uncomfortable, by slowing down when speed is rewarded, by choosing connection over control. And yes, sometimes that means your life won't look impressive. Sometimes it will look small. Sometimes it will look boring to other people. Let it. A meaningful life doesn't need witnesses. It needs participants. If you're listening to this late at night, feeling that familiar heaviness, that sense that time is slipping through your fingers, I want you to know something I wish I'd known earlier. You don't have to fix your whole life. You don't have to find your purpose. You don't have to become someone else. You just have to stay human, in a world that keeps trying to make you numb. Care when it would be easier not to. Stay soft without becoming weak. Let things matter, even though it makes you vulnerable. Especially because it makes you vulnerable. That vulnerability, that willingness to be affected by life, is not a flaw, it's the point. At the end of all this, what remains isn't what you accumulated, it's what you allowed yourself to feel. Who you allowed yourself to love. How open you stayed. And if you can hold on to that, even imperfectly, even inconsistently, then one day, without fanfare, without certainty, you'll realize something quiet and steady has been growing all along. A life that mattered. Not loudly, not famously, but truly. And when that realization finally settles in, it doesn't arrive as a rush of joy or a sudden sense of victory. It arrives as calm. A deep, steady calm that says, I was here. I showed up. I didn't waste my time pretending to be someone else. That calm is what I feel more often now. Not every day, not all the time, but enough to know it's real. I wake up slower than I used to. My body complains more. The world moves faster than I do. But inside, things are quieter. I'm no longer chasing proof that my life meant something. I'm no longer arguing with the past or bargaining with the future. I'm here, and being here, fully, turns out to be a kind of victory no one talks about. There are mornings I sit by the window and watch the light change on the walls. That's it. That's the whole moment. Years ago, I would have felt guilty for that. Like I should be doing something more productive. Something that looked like it mattered. Now I understand. Presence is productive. It produces steadiness. It produces clarity. It produces the ability to notice when someone else needs you. Because that's the other summa down, you become available. Available to hear what isn't being said. Available to catch the subtle signs of struggle. Available to respond instead of react. Most of the hurt we cause each other comes from being rushed. From answering too quickly. From assuming instead of asking. From treating people like problems to solve instead of experiences to share. If I could leave you with a single habit, just one, it would be this. Pause before you move on. Pause before you speak. Pause before you judge. Pause before you decide that something doesn't matter. That pause is where humanity lives. It's where you notice the weight someone is carrying. It's where you choose a gentler word. It's where you decide to stay 5 minutes longer, when every instinct says leave. Those 5 minutes will never show up on a timeline or a highlight reel. But they might show up years later, in the way someone handles a hard moment, because you once stayed with them in one. I think often about how fragile we all are beneath the surface. How many people are walking around holding themselves together with effort you can't see? The cashier, the teacher, the friend who seems fine, the teenager in the passenger seat, staring out the window, wondering if anything matters. We don't need more advice, we need more witnesses. People who can say, without fixing or correcting, I see you, I'm here. That sentence, lived consistently, has more power than we give it credit for. So if you're still listening, if some part of you is tired or unsure or quietly hopeful, let this be permission. Permission to live a life that's slower than advertised, quieter than expected, deeper than it looks. Permission to stop auditioning and start participating. Permission to believe that the way you treat people on ordinary days is already shaping the world you live in. One interaction at a time, one choice at a time, one small moment of attention, stacked gently on the next. That's how a meaningful life is made, not by force, not by spectacle, but by staying awake to the fact that this imperfect, unfinished, ordinary moment is already part of something that matters.